Thank you. Call the meeting to order at 4 p.m. Adoption the agenda. I've got a couple items and then I'll go down the list for members if they've got anything. Member Lightfoot's email to be added under 5.2. Going to move Mr. Dickinson from up under, he'll be after number 3, the adoption of the minutes, so we can leave the meeting. Is there any of the committee members have anything that they'd like to add? Can I get a motion to adopt the agenda as amended?
Member Taylor moves.
Thank you. Seconder,
Lightfoot second.
thank you. Topic 3. Can I get a motion to adopt the minutes for the March 16th, 2022 Citizens Advisory Select Committee if there are no amendments or corrections?
Member Taylor can move.
Thank you. Seconder,
I'll second. Ollie.
thank you. So we're going to get an update on the building bylaw 710 and 711 from Mr. Dickinson. Ron, you can leave the meeting as soon as you're done fielding the questions. Mr. Dickinson, did you hear me?
Yes, I can. I'm having a little technical glitch here, but I can hear you now. I might have missed what you just said, though. I'm sorry.
So we had moved you up so you can do your presentation on the building bylaw 710 and 711, and then you can leave the meeting once you field the questions from the committee. So you're on.
Ron, are you able to give the committee an update on bylaw 710 and 11?
Isn't it number 4 positions open?
No, the number 6 was moved up. The 2 members have moved and seconded to move number 6 up under number 3.
My apologies, I didn't know that. Thank you.
Yeah. But I'm not sure why Ron is not speaking to us.
Mr. Dickinson, can you hear us? He's showing being connected.
Yeah, but he's having technical issues, he said. I'll try texting him.
Okay, so we'll move on.
Yeah.
So he's having technical difficulties. We'll come back to him. Number 4.1. Committee positions open or 3 vacancies. Have we got anybody along with recommendations to bring forward? If you do, please email them to me before Friday so we can get them on the next regular council agenda, please. The motion that started this committee stated up to 10. There doesn't have to be 10. The next one we got is 4.2, Citizens Advisory Internal Communications. I believe I was supposed to do something on that, but when I read the thing with Mr. Hogan leaving, we didn't have a quorum. So nothing got done on that by my end. So I'll track that down as soon as this meeting's over and get that started. Number 5, addition to the CAC responsibility. The allocation of unmet needs responsibility was passed on to the CASC by council. But I had the responsibility of the donations deferred until I had a chance at this meeting to hear from the members of whether they want to take that on or not. So, moving on to 5.2, I'll turn the floor over to member Lightfoot. And you can go
yes.
briefly on your email, and then I'll go through if people have questions.
If I could speak to the Unmet Needs Committee issue.
Yeah.
I believe that it's a provincial, the province has guidelines for Unmet Needs Committee. And it's page 56 and 57 in Appendix 6. And I would suggest that before we make a decision that information is shared with members.
Which document are you referring to?
I think it's, I'm going to have to get back to you on that, Leslie. I think it was the EMBC or the province guidelines for unmet needs. It's a template.
Okay.
It talks about the mission, the principles, assistance based on need, and guidelines for allocation and public accountability. I'll forward that to you later, and perhaps we can hunt down the document in which it's contained.
Excellent, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. So I've turned the floor over to member Lightfoot at 5.2 to go through her email that she put out.
Okay, I'm just bringing it up. So I'm a little slow on the,
Take your time, please.
okay. I'm having a hard time here. Just give me a second. I'm
Yeah,
using an
that's
old
fine.
iPad that doesn't treat me well. Well, just a little bit of background, because I listened to the last council meeting, I did see that it had been forwarded to us. And I took some time and I did contact our financial officer just to get a little bit of information. I probably could have monopolized his day much longer, but I didn't. So if you'd like me to read it, I can go through what I forwarded to everyone, and it's regarding donations. At the last regular council meeting on March the 23rd, it was decided that the distribution of donation cards be referred to the CASC Committee for recommendations. A rough estimate of the assets at this time suggests there's approximately $58,000 in Visa cash cards donated in February by CN. And these cards are set to expire June the 30th. There's also another $24,000 in cards that will expire in December. And these are a variety of cards for gas, food, and I'm assuming cash. But how many in each category is unclear. So I propose that the distribution of cash cards set to expire June the 30th be determined immediately and be viewed as urgent. The distribution of the other cards can be determined as soon as possible after the first dispersion is underway, but more details will need to be received on the size and use of these cards, which will enable better decision-making on disbursement. So of the CN cash cards, $58,000, there were several suggestions received on how to disperse the funds, and numerous conversations were had at the recent community picnic event, which I might add, it was an excellent event. Lots of conversation, but we all wanted more time. So we're hoping we'll have another event soon. I suggested the following, having received general consensus on this rough outline of disbursement. So to assist with loss of possessions and ongoing living expenses for those who lost by fire or contamination their primary residence, I would like to move that all citizens, men, women, and children who had their primary residence destroyed in the June 30th fire in the village of Lytton be eligible to receive $350 in cash cards. This would include anyone who was residing in the village, whether homeowner or renter. So then I attached a definition of primary residence. Primary residence, a person's primary residence or main residence is the dwelling where they usually live, typically a house or an apartment. A person can only have one primary residence at any given time, though they may share the residence with other people. So part of the strategy, it is understood that an accounting would be required, and one suggestion would be that the cards be bundled with numbers recorded. Each eligible resident would receive a numbered bundle, which would have the card codes recorded. I know this seems like considerable work, but from my conversation with the CFO, my understanding is that it's required. Perhaps Terry can give some clarification if this is not the case. Residents would sign a declaration that stated their name and mailing address, and a declaration that on June 30th, their primary residence was, and they would put in the specific address. And in the case of an adult making a claim for a minor, the resident could also name eligible dependents in their care. The resident would sign, date the statement with the received bundle numbers recorded. Delivery can be a bit of a challenge, so it's suggested that a fairly accurate list of residents has been developed, and though perhaps imperfect, would allow for a relatively quick release of the majority of affected people. It has been suggested that some could be given out as early as the advance poll on the 20th and the regular voting day of April the 30th, as people would be in the village area. If a staff person could be located in Lytton on these days, they could oversee and collect paperwork. Another suggestion I've received, which isn't in the document I provided, was that perhaps a staff person could attend the Resiliency Center one day a week. That time could be advertised, and people, if they were in the area, could take advantage of that. The majority of displaced residents do reside in the areas of Merritt, Ashcroft, Cache Creek, Lytton, Boston Bar, Hope, Chilliwack, and Abbotsford. Another idea might be for staff or approved agents to set days where they will receive and process applications in those locations. I suggested that we might want to discuss that to assist in this process, perhaps the gas cards from the $24,000 could be used to cover the fuel costs of personnel attending these events. It has been shared that staff do not support sending the cards through registered mail, as collection of signed receipts and cost make it unwieldy. However, if there are a small number of residents, this should be considered an option. Again, I'm asking for some discussion on could the cost of this mail out be covered by the use of cash cards. Another consideration which might assist in distribution could be a release form that, when accompanied with the resident declaration, appoints another to receive the donation. This would entail having a declaration and agent appointment forms available in hard copy or as a downloadable document. In conclusion, the residents of the Lytton area are all suffering loss of services, supply lines, and social interactions. However, those who lost their homes and worldly treasures have an even bigger loss, and it's hoped that these additional funds will assist them as they rebuild and recover. Just a note that when I talked with people, assessed that there's approximately 155 people lost their primary residence on June the 30th. This number was determined by discussion with locals and doing a house by house count. If this number proves accurate, at $350 per resident, it would leave a balance of $3,750. We could, if we allocated $375 per person, we would be $125 short from the 58,000, but that could be taken from the other cards that were available. So some of the unknowns are numbers accurate? Are they high or are they low? And for future consideration of the distribution of the rest of the cards, how is that $24,000 broken out? This would be a discussion for a later time. So I hope that we can make a decision today. And I hope that council next week approves it, because it would be extremely unfortunate to see these cards lapse. And June the 30th is coming up on us quite quickly. So I think that's all I have to say. I don't know if anyone wants to make comment or has questions. Thank you.
I was just, Member Lightfoot, I was just gonna go through our members that are here in case there's anything they need clarified or anything, and then we can open it up for discussion. So I'll start. Member Baxter?
Hi,
How are you?
I'm doing good.
Do you have any questions for Member Lightfoot's presentation? And then we'll get into discussion afterwards.
Yeah, no, I don't have any questions.
Thank you.
Okay.
Member Harrison? No voice, Ollie. You're muted now.
Okay. Yeah, I do have a couple of questions. There was one about, I didn't understand that part about, what was it? Something about money for travel. Do you know what I'm talking about, Jeswa?
I'm
gonna have to go back.
I think so. So if people aren't able to come to Lytton and pick up the cards, and it's decided by council that volunteers can be entrusted with that task, instead of having it come out of their pocket to travel, say, to Ashcroft, there are cash cards within the 24,000, the other allocation that expires the end of December. And I was just wondering if, I mean, it's part of the cost of distributing the donations. If Village didn't want to take it out of their general revenue, that might be a way to accommodate that cost.
Okay, I understand what you're saying. Yeah, so but that wasn't part of your motion. So,
well, it's just a suggestion until we can fine tune it as we go through the conversation today.
that's what I'm
I just think it's urgent to get the 58,000 out before the end of June. Yeah.
Yeah, well, thanks for clarifying that. And I think that you're right. We need to get this out in a timely manner. We've already lost out on that Anderson Creek one because that was a difficult one. But anyway, we aren't there and it's going to have expired by the time we get there. So we'll write that one off. But yeah, so I'm just going back over your motion here.
Okay.
And I don't really have, that was the only question that I had was what you meant by that. So other than that, yeah, I'm good.
If I can get your opinion though, do you think that would be reasonable if
This-
volunteers need to travel? They could be given a card to accommodate gas.
I think that would open a can of worms,
Okay,
but yeah,
Sure.
I'd have to think about it a little bit. I feel like it would open a can of worms, so
it's not part of the main motion. It's just maybe
Yeah.
a strategy that might be considered.
yeah, maybe we can iron out the details later on, but getting the motion passed right now is my prime concern too.
Okay. We can let council decide that.
So that's all I have to say. If someone else wants the floor there.
Thank you. Member Hogan?
I read Jeswa's, what she presented just now as well, and then I'm in favor of it, and I know that 2 people already stepped forward and said they would volunteer to assist in doing this, so. And then the other part for the Unmet Needs Committee, I know that the City of Merritt has something similar and they implemented that right away, so you could probably look to them and borrow what they've used to their committee.
Thank you. Member Michelle?
I read through the email and I would be for it as well. And I don't think I have any questions. Thanks.
Thank you. Member Taylor?
I'm for it. I just had a question. I'm guessing it's just the donations that were given were to the people that were affected in the village, right? It doesn't include other people that are outside the village limits, like people in the TNRD that might have lost their homes.
At the picnic, could I speak to that?
Sure can. You got the floor.
Okay, that possibility was suggested. And I have to say that when I was at the picnic, I talked to probably a dozen or 15 people within the community. And overwhelmingly, they believe that it should go to the municipality. That other monies perhaps were given to the TNRD, they weren't sure, but and I'm not clear how CN intended it to be distributed, but the feedback I got was that it was just for the properties within the village proper.
Okay, I was just curious where it was donated to, if it was the village or the other places, but if it's just a village, then yeah, it's fine. I'm all good with it.
Thank you. Couple of points just for clarification. The CN cards are good until the 31st of July, not 30th of June. Let me just make that correction. Just a note here that when CN sent these last ones out, and I can only speak to that, we would like to provide the village a portion of the remaining Visa gift cards as soon as possible to support the recovery effort. I think that these were left over from Anderson Creek or anywhere else that they were putting them out. I guess they must have found them in a back room somewhere and wanted to get rid of them. For the CN ones at Anderson Creek, the cards given out down there, they started with $100 for gas on the reserve there, and after they ran out, they just went straight to $100 and then $500 from CN. And they were given to, because I double checked this when I was down there at the time, those cards were given out to what they call people affected by the fire. Anybody under the evacuation order also was able to get those. And the reason I bring that up, if there's people up on Ponderosa and Roaring Way have to drive an awful long way to get their groceries, and the gas costs are up. And people, I mean, prices are going up like crazy everywhere. So we might want to think, and I'm just throwing this out there, that for the CN ones, all the people within the village be taken into consideration. I also spoke with our CFO, and he's the guy I've got to appease here, so. RBC donated $26,250 in Visa cards also. And there's nowhere that we can find out anywhere where there's a stipulation of where that money is to go. So that can be added on to our $58,250, to the best of my knowledge. And
Sorry, Counselor Hay, can you repeat the amount that you just said that was given from RBC? I only caught.
me adding off my thing. I got the CN $58,250. RBC Visa card, $26,250. I've got 105 cards there. And I might be able to bet because I'm adding on a real small screen here.
I think, Counselor Hay,
Sorry?
just to correct you on the smaller batch, that 26,000 includes a cash donation. So I think it's,
Oh.
you need to deduct 3440 from that. At the very first line on that report was a cash donation. Sorry about that.
No, I didn't put the cash in because I got in on further. What I did is I added them up going down at 105. Anyway.
If I may,
26,000 close.
Yeah,
It's not funny to me. Okay.
I'll pull it up on my computer as you're talking and I'll sort out.
Okay. Thank you. So the two visas are pretty well, we can use them to divide out on the people. The Safeway fuel can only be, I would imagine, be spent on fuel unless it comes from them. And there's only $680 there, 34 $20 tickets. IGA had $131 $20 one, 2,620. They can only be spent, I would imagine, at IGA. And then I had the CAF as 3,440. But our CFO will probably correct me on that. So the total cash coming out there is $93,240. Quite a lot of money. So I think what you have to decide, because CN originally when they gave theirs out, and I don't mean to sound like a whiner here, but when that went out at Anderson Creek, we had 900 and some residents go down there and get that money. And it was people were going there without it. And the thing I've spoken to the CFO too, is somehow when people are going to receive this, we got to get something like their driver's license number. The CFO has to appease a bunch of auditors, okay, for every last card that goes out. And it's going to be up to us to keep track of that. And like I was talking to him also about, I don't have a problem if, I've offered with I'll sign for theirs and mail them over doing my own thing because they can't get here. But a lot of people, like 900, made it to Anderson Creek to get the $500, $600. And I'm sure that the Resilience Center, we in the committee take turns in there and we advertise it on the village website. We'll get the people coming and going. And Member Lightfoot's idea about being there on advanced poll day and voting day, almost being, I'm not sure how we can interfere with the voting legislation. Like we can't be out there directing traffic, but that we should get a lot of people there. Then I think that what we could be able to do at that time is regroup and have a look at what we've got done and what we haven't got done. And then do another method of attack to get everybody out there. Yeah, please.
Councillor Hay or Chair Hay, I also need to add that we would actually have to go to the school district and ask permission for that, that part of the school to be used for that purpose. I would want to look into the election process because we would have to be very careful that people aren't, it would be difficult to figure out who's not trying to do voter persuasion. I'm not saying that they would, but we would have to make sure that that's not going to be a problem. Because if you had a tie vote, you have, and you go to court, you have to prove that you did everything proper in an election process.
I think there's a 200 or 300 meter thing within the.
There's 100 meters, yeah.
Okay. Anyway,
Not trying to be difficult.
no, I'm gonna go by the law, if we don't want to lose the election. So let's
I
go
have-
through. Sorry,
I have my hand up if I could make comment.
yeah,
The details, the strategies, all of those are to be determined. I think the main part of the motion that I wanted to be considered today, because I was under the understanding that they expired June the 30th, which is, by the time it goes to council, 12 weeks or 10 weeks away. Terry, could you clarify that it is July the 31st or June the 30th? I know when we spoke, I had written down June the 30th. Perhaps that was my mistake.
Yeah, I apologize. I'm not sure where the misinformation came from or the confusion, but when Councillor Hay contacted me today, I went and actually pulled a couple samples out of the box, and they say they're good through the end of 07/2022. So end of July 2022.
Okay, regardless, it's fairly quick when we have to work out a strategy to get them out. And as much as I understand everyone having to travel for groceries and dentist or doctor or whatever, you know, those that lost their homes and those that didn't lost their home, the reality is we all are facing those extra costs. This motion was specifically for people that lost their primary residence, people that are still in makeshift housing or motels or bunking with grandma. I don't know. Those people, in addition to having to travel for everything, are homeless. They still need their pillows and blankets in their own bed. So that was my feeling, that this large lump of money should go to those particular people. And the rest of the money, we've received some details today, but I personally need to see it in front of my eyes to make a good decision and to digest the details. So perhaps that is a topic for the next meeting or whatever. If we could have that more specific information, we can have a strategy, and perhaps that will include people that didn't lose their primary residence. But I would hope today the bold-faced sentences in my suggestion, if I can just modify the date, I think is what I would like to put forward. And so I propose that the distribution of cash cards set to expire July 31st be determined immediately and be viewed as urgent. And that all citizens, men, women, and children who had their primary residence destroyed in the June 30th fire in the village of Lytton be eligible to receive $350 in Visa cash cards. That is what I would like to put forward and have this group endorse. The details and strategies are for staff, of course, and council to determine. Thanks. That's all I wanted to speak to at this time. Thank you.
that's the motion, you're putting that motion on the floor.
Yes.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder?
I'll second that.
Thank you. Now it's open for discussion. Yes, Jay.
Yeah, I would just like to say definitely support the proposal. As a resident who lost their primary residence, it would just be nice to have the donations easily accessible to people, because for someone like myself, you know, I didn't receive any ESS supports. And so think it would just be good if we could just make it easy for people. So I think this is a good proposal and I support it.
Super. Anybody else? So just to clear the air, council already has wanted to give this over to the committee. I'm the one that said no until we got here. So we want to go ahead with plans. All we do is go back to council saying the committee accepted it. Okay, because along with the financial donation comes the 500,000 board feet of lumber to do. There's another gentleman that's got all kinds of machinery that he wants to donate. And I'm sure there was a second lumber one coming in too. And the other one is that outside of the CFO, we get the paper back. We don't have staff that can come in here for 2 or 3 days. We're right in the middle of the recovery and we can't get that stopped. So it's gonna be up to us to volunteer our time and meet either at the Resilience Center or whatever. And the big one we're gonna have to check on too is both voting days. Advanced poll matter on Saturdays and the school is not open. I don't think the Resiliency Center is during that day. So we're gonna have to see about getting it open if it's legal.
For what's that?
If we go to the voting days on Saturday, correct?
Yeah, and so we are using the Resiliency Center for the advanced polls and the general voting day. That's why I
We
say.
better set a tent up out in the parking lot.
Unless we can use another area of the school, which I can speak to Teresa Downs about.
Can
Go
I,
CFO.
can I get some clarification on the motion, please? I know it's on the floor, but so is the motion that hypothetically, if you have a home that has 2 adults and a child, they each get that amount, or is it one amount for each home? And like, are you making a distinction between minor children and adult children? I'm not clear on all those metrics.
Okay. Would you like me to answer that, Terry?
Well, I think it needs to be clear if,
Okay.
so I'm not trying to insult the motion. I apologize. I just wanted to get clarity.
So the intent of the motion was every resident, man, woman, and child. So if it's a house with 1 adult, that's one disbursement. If it's a couple with 3 children, it's 5 disbursements. So, and within the, I'll call it Appendix A because I'm not sure what I sent out to the group, but I think it was following our terms of reference as far as providing background. That overview, if you want to call it that, sort of clarifies, I think. I don't know. I believe you were, perhaps you weren't copied that. I'm sorry if you weren't. I can forward that.
I can forward it to him. Somebody, Jasmine had forwarded it to me, so I can forward it to Terry.
So when CN was giving out at Anderson Creek, the youngest person I know got it was a 3-year-old child. And they were capable and able to get that money. So remember, life can drop them right down to infants.
Yeah, I'm not suggesting that I have an opinion. I just want to get clarity on what the expectation is.
No, the expectation was that every person, regardless of age, that lost their primary residence, that lost their bed, that lost their toys, their boots, the whole gamut, would receive this donation.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Any more discussion?
Sure.
Yes, member Hogan.
Yeah, I just wanted Jeswa to clarify. She said people at the picnic were in favor of just the people from the village of Lytton, but when these donations came in, like from IGA, I don't think they meant to exclude people from the TNRD. When you look at it, there was how many houses affected within the TNRD jurisdiction, like Don and Trisha's, Muriel Berber's, and Clyde Jory's. So why just exclude them when these bigger organizations may not have meant to exclude them, and just doesn't make sense when the fire started within the village boundary that takes out their residences and where they slept. just.
Yeah.
Seems mean-spirited.
I know it's somewhat of a sticky point. Because I mean, the IR 17 and 18, of course, were also affected, right? It's jurisdiction, I guess. And I'm not sure how.
But there were like no GoFundMe's from TNRD, like, but there were GoFundMe's for Village of Lytton and the First Nation, and so you're just marginalizing them a little bit more.
I'm marginalizing myself also, but and you know, I was minded and I asked that question, and I'm just reporting the response I got. Having said that, this is the initial 58,000 we're trying to distribute. Perhaps the committee can come up with some way to assist those people in further when we decide how to distribute the rest of the money. I'm just reporting what I heard. I was trying to stay neutral. It just, I was surprised. Yeah.
So I guess,
Member Hogan, would, I think our staff might be able to check with the TNRD to see if they had received any funding from those other agencies. I know when the fire first started, there was money flying everywhere, almost to everybody. I'm trying to look here because I know the railway had 3 different organizations on it. I just can't find it right now. But would that be okay if I double check, or staff will double check with the TNRD to see if those people were covered? And we'll get back with an answer. We can discuss it with the next group.
so
I see your hand, Mara.
I'd like to say something too at some point.
Yep. Member Harrison,
all of
go
your-
ahead.
Okay, well, because I'm not clear now, I'm a little confused about the 58,000. I understood that was CN money. So it's not, it includes others like IGA and.
No.
So is it?
CN is different altogether than we have here. It's $58,250 from CN in Visa cards, period. IGA and Safeway fuels are different altogether.
So then that, I think that's what Jesua was putting the motion forward, that the money, that was my understanding, that the money from the CN would go to these 155 residents who lost their homes. And the other money that is from IGA and other places like that, that would certainly involve the larger community that lost homes. That's not what's on the table today. Am I correct here?
Yes, you are. I think, if I may, and I'll agree with you, Member Lightfoot. When the donations came in, I've been trying to track back of what happened. The staff of the day didn't keep good records. Okay, so money that came in might have been earmarked for this, but we don't know, and that's why I talked to the CFO, like the visas, we can use them wherever we want. If CNs had come in and said, this is to be used for clothing only, then we'd have to put it up for clothing. But we can't find that out. Okay, there's no records. The records are gone. Okay, and you're right. Madam Lightfoot is trying to get on the table, has a motion on the table to deal with that 58,250 to the people who lost their home in the village of Lytton. The other ones, we can deal with them later. What I was trying to say to Member Holden is, our staff wouldn't, I'm sure wouldn't mind checking with the TNRD to see if they've got IGA and Safeway fuel ones for their people.
I mean, if
Go ahead. Go ahead.
I don't want to
Yeah.
prolong this, but
Yeah.
if I may, I mean, this is a motion. It can be amended. If the numbers are correct, if it really is, you know, and I think it might be a little bit low. I think it might be 157. But at $350 each, I think, I can't remember what I said, $3,400 or $3,500 left. So that would be another 10 cards. So, you know, if someone wants to amend it to include the TNRD properties adjacent to the municipality that have a Lytton post office box, I'm not sure how many people we're talking about. We've got Jade Springs, we've got Glasgow's, we've got Jory's, Kingston's, and out number 12, there was one residence lost. I mean, and then if we, you know, it just gets more complicated. My goal was to disperse some money as quickly as possible to those that I know are still out of their homes in the village of Lytton. I mean, really the criteria would be with the donator, and I don't know that CN said it's just for the village or it's for the whole area. But I do believe we need to make a decision today. I like the motion I put forward. If we want to consider TNRD people that were affected in subsequent disbursements, we should keep that on the front burner, perhaps. Looking for input. It's where I'm sitting now, but I can be swayed if someone has good reasoning.
Yeah, so if I'm just gonna add a little thing to that. The committee and the council only have jurisdiction within the boundaries of the village. If we're gonna start tossing money outside, I'm not sure what the legalities are of doing that. Okay, so the motion on the floor is for the $58,250 to be evenly dispersed as best as possible to the people who lost their houses downtown. Is there any more discussion?
Well, I'd just like to say that if we're following Robert's Rules of Order, we need to get a seconder for that motion. We've already had a discussion before it was seconded, if I'm correct here.
It was seconded.
So you have Joshua Lightfoot and Ollie Harrison.
Oh, well, there you go. I'm the one who seconded.
Thanks, Ollie.
Okay, so
You're just-
that
you're
bead
just-
on my face.
We
yeah.
suffer similar things.
Anyway, we've had the discussion. We need to take a vote on whether everyone agrees on this. And if there's some naysayers on it, people that vote against it, then we deal with that at that time. So let's
Okay.
get this motion done first, and then we'll move on to what we need to do. Sorry, Councilor Hay, or
That's okay, we are, but I have to go through the discussion process before we can do the vote.
all
Is
right.
there any more discussion? Good. I'll call the question, and I'm gonna go down through the list so I can make notes of who voted what. So we'll take the vote, and I'm just gonna go down, Jay Baxter,
Yes, I support the vote.
thank you. Ollie,
Yes,
Johnny,
Yes.
Joshua,
Yes,
Melissa,
Yes.
Mr. Taylor.
Yes.
Thank you. It's carried. So we can start making the plans for that now, okay? And I'll go back to council on next Wednesday and say, I withdraw my concerns that the committee may not want to deal with all the donations. Okay? So we
Could you-
should be striking a subcommittee to look after this.
Did they vote on
I
that?
thought that's the purpose of the Unmet Needs Committee.
Yeah.
Yeah, we just took on the responsibility. We didn't take on the committee.
That's, yeah, so,
Good point.
yeah. He's
But we, at the meeting, we took on the responsibility of the unmet needs.
I believe Member Lightfoot wanted to, she was gonna pass the information that she had from the
Yeah.
EMBC document.
Yeah.
And so that would be the next CAC meeting, was it not, Member Lightfoot, that you'd make that decision?
I just don't feel well informed and the scope and the criteria for the unmet needs committee, and someone gave me that information. I found it interesting, but still, there's a lot of gaps in how specifically it would work, and I think we need some background information before we accept that responsibility. As far as forming a subcommittee at this time, I think until council approves this motion, we're all busy people, and I wouldn't want to waste time. So, you know, come next Thursday, if council approves it, then perhaps we can just share strategies among ourselves through emails or whatever. I think our financial officer will have a lot of information that he would want to share and requirements that are mandated by his position.
Yeah, I mean, I know there was some discussion there about like the mechanics and how to do this, but the first thing that pops into my head is the security and management of these cards. You have to understand, I've got a banker's box and more than that, like I'm talking a huge box that are full of these cards. So for somebody to be leaving them in their car, in their home, whatever, I'm not so sure about that.
Yeah, would have to be flushed out quite a bit.
I would like to just make a point that council had adopted an unmet needs terms of committee terms of reference in December. And it was flushed out from what I remember, because I was just coming on then, to take into consideration the responsibilities of an unmet needs committee under the NBC framework, but we can double check that. So I will email everybody the terms of reference that was adopted.
Great.
And see, okay?
That would be helpful. Thank you.
So in the interim, in your presentation, you said we have a list. Can we get that list together?
I believe the list has been offered to staff. And I have a copy. I'll ask the person that produced it for me how she would like to see it forwarded, but I do believe that staff has been offered that in the past, Mr. Matusi anyway. But yes. And
when we talk about the list of people, we talk about contact.
Some contacts are there, some emails. There's a few that need to be flushed out. For instance, the forestry personnel. I know they're getting ready to be deployed outside of the area, so I could check with forestry and get those few details more firmed up. But yes, I believe it's been offered, but if staff doesn't have it, we can see that it's forwarded, yes.
The reason I'm saying that is we should be getting this work done in the background, because we're talking about the end of July, and on the 28th, we don't want to say, well, we get one more name, we'll be okay, we can go. We should be ready to roll this thing out pretty quick. And if we don't have all the names, we better figure a way of getting them.
Well, I think there's probably close to 20 in the Ashcroft Cache Creek area. There's probably 20 between Lytton and Boston Bar. So, I mean, and then down in Hope and Abbotsford, there may be even more around here. So I've thought about it quite a bit, and I thought, get the ones where they are out immediately, And then just dig in a little bit deeper and make sure that everyone else is contacted, and perhaps on the village website or whatever, they could, if motion passed, you could, that anyone that lost their principal residence is entitled to $350. We will be contacting you, and if you feel that you've been missed, please contact and give a contact number. You know, given that we've just found 4 more weeks in getting this out, because we were rushing for June the 30th, but we've got a little bit more breathing time, but it's still imperative that they get out as soon as possible. People are still paying mortgages. People are still paying fire insurance. You know, if you get $350, maybe that's your fire insurance for a couple of months. But you don't want to just recklessly spend it. I'm sure they have many needs that need to be addressed. Maybe it's new brakes for their car because they've been driving all over the world for the last 8 months. So yes, staff can contact me, or I'll make sure that this information gets shared. Yeah, we do need to work on it pronto.
Yeah,
You're right.
We've got to get it together, because it's a concern of our CFO that things are done properly, that we don't say, well, I know we misplaced 20 of these, and I'm sure they went in the mail last week to somebody out there. That is not going to fly with him. Anyway, CFO, you had something you wanted to say, yes?
Yeah. So my other thought as I digest the motion is, if we don't have all these people that qualify to pick up the cards by a certain date, and I think I articulated this to you, Councillor Hay, what do we do then? Like, so can there be a recommendation from the committee relative to by a specific date, whether it's May 15th or May 25th or something, that if the cards are not delivered to the qualified people, that then the next step is what with those cards?
Right.
The food bank.
Well, that's my
Food bank would be the
that's
next
my
part of
thought.
that.
Yeah.
We could give it.
Yeah. So, but I think, you know, the committee needs to consider this, and I think it, from a staff perspective, I think I would appreciate if that was part of the report coming back to council next week.
Could you make a friendly amendment to that? If by say 15th of June, whatever cards are left over will go, the food bank is probably the best place to put it.
Could we make it the June the 30th, just to give us, you know, by the time it gets to council, it's only 10 weeks till June the 30th. Just so we can make sure people get out. And then if I'm agreeable, you know, that any amount left out of this 58,000 go to the food bank, but they would still have a month. And I know that the relief centers have certain challenges right now as far as holding materials and stuff, but that would give them time to perhaps create a list where they could put that money. And at our next meeting, which would be, well, at our early June meeting, we would hopefully have a report on how much money was left unaccounted or available at that point. So, I mean, it could be a friendly amendment, or we can just make that decision at the next meeting or the 2 meetings ahead.
It probably would be good to have as a friendly amendment so the CFO can make his plans of what he needs. He's the guy that's this whole thing is gonna hinge on if it goes south.
Well, I think it would be reasonable to talk to the food bank to see if they're willing to take that on. I mean, it will take a certain amount of energy and dedication and maneuvering to use that money if they don't have a location established at that point. But that's just my opinion. There's other members I give the floor over.
Well, you're okay with the friendly amendment?
What was the date?
Let's do the 29th of June because the 30th is not a good day.
I would like input from the rest of the committee.
Mr. Taylor,
June 29th or the 30th is fine. It doesn't matter to me on the date.
Member Michelle,
Sorry, what was that?
there's a friendly amendment, we're on the floor and, Member Lightfoot wanted to get the take on all the members, and it's if any cards left over or that haven't been claimed as of
Oh,
the
yeah.
29th of June will go to the food bank.
Yeah, I'm support that.
Thank you.
Actually, you know,
Member
Ian,
Lightfoot?
I probably should just say, okay, let's make it a friendly amendment because we're getting everybody's opinion and vote at this stage anyway, so.
You've already voted at once.
So both, Ollie, are you, I'm okay with, or I guess the mover, which is Joshua, is okay with the friendly amendment?
Yeah.
Yeah,
The
okay.
June 29th, yes.
June
Yeah.
29th, yeah.
Thank you.
So they have to vote on it.
You already did.
All those in favor? Okay, you
Yeah,
got them
I
all?
went down,
Okay.
everybody was in favor.
Excellent, thank you.
Okay. So it appears when I look at the lovely screen that Mr. Dickinson is not with us, so we're gonna have to skip that. I'll get him at the next meeting.
What I can give a short update, but I'll be able to answer a lot of questions. Yeah, so he's saying that he had some work done in his furnace room today and they must have disconnected his Wi-Fi. So council had a workshop on Monday afternoon at 5 p.m. To discuss the over 200 comments that came in. Most of the comments were very similar to each other. So if you actually boiled them down, there wasn't as many. So bylaw 710 didn't have a lot of comments to it. So some of the things will be looked at that were small, but bylaw 711 will not go forward at this point until we've done some other work and research. Also, they are looking at moving the fire resilience in for stuff from bylaw 711 into official community plan development permit area. And some of the bylaws 710 would go into a zoning. So bylaw 710, the intention is to bring it back to council for second reading, which would also be out there enough to give the public a chance to look at the differences for April 27th. Bylaw 711 is not ready to be moved forward at this point.
Just on a side, if he was here, I was gonna introduce him, I was gonna pass this on, because I read not all 220, but I read a good many of them. And I saw one that said, a person wanted a tall tree near their house, and another one said that they saw the elder sitting under them downtown. And then there was 3 others said, cut them down. So the poor guy, if he cuts them down, he's gonna make 2 enemies. If he leaves them up, he's gonna make 3. He's trying his hardest to appease the residents, but he's also got the safety of the whole community at stake here. So it's a real thankless job the guy's doing. Anyway, thank you for that. So moving on to 7.1, and I'm glad that you all got a chance to talk to a lot of people out at the picnic. And I'm just gonna go through and see what people have been talking to our members about and anything that they would like done. And I'll start with Mr. Hogan.
What kind of things did you say you wanted done?
I didn't hear Johnny.
I didn't hear what you,
Okay, it's under reports and it's the committee member report. People you've been talking to, any concerns that people have or anything else that we should know about and take forward?
no, I have none at this time.
Okay, thank you. Member Lightfoot?
The main one I hear is what is underinsured? What is the definition of underinsured and the length of the form that's required to allow them to proceed with demolition. So specifically,
You talking about the right
Is-
form?
Is does the underinsured mean anything over what your policy covers? And as soon as that's clarified, then I believe citizens will move ahead with their waivers and cleanup can proceed quicker at this point because they're being advised it's not clear. They're looking for cheaper ways to do it because a lot of estimates are 2 to 3 times what their policy covers, if they have a policy. That's the main one. And the office. People want to have an office. People want to be able to go and photocopy. They want to have perolator delivered to town. They want to have an area where they can go and pick up a building permit or whatever. And the Resiliency Center in part does that, but it's not the same as a village office. So the murkiness of what underinsured means and the absence of an office are the 2 issues that I'm hearing most. Thank you.
Thank you.
If it helps, we're just as frustrated as probably the citizens in a way about the office part of it, because definitely for sure, we've been trying to get an office established. Anyways,
Yeah.
as soon as we have something concrete and money, because that's the big issue, is the money, we'll be sure to let the citizens know. But thank you for that, Joshua, because I feel for you for sure.
Yeah, thank you.
Member Michelle?
I haven't really talked to too many people being stuck down here, but the biggest concern I've heard as well is the clarification, not so much a clarification of underinsured, because like I said, I know for sure that I've got an $8,000 shortfall, but it's the clarification on how to get that covered, like the balance of the my debris removal that's not covered. So I've talked to a few people who are underinsured in the debris removal, and they don't know how to go about getting it covered. And like Jezua mentioned, the length of the right of entry permit. I know there's a couple clauses that are listed on there. I don't have it in front of me, but it's basically people are scared to sign it because it leaves them. It looks like it leaves them more open to liability. So I don't know whether we need that right of entry permit broken down more, like to explain those clauses that are in there.
I know that's being looked at, because it came through the mayor and that was after that, to get it looked at, see if they can pare it down. Usually when you get into documents like that, it's just legal people trying to cover everybody, so nothing happens.
Yeah, and I think it would just be better if it was more straightforward. I think I don't know if it was number 17. It's the general waiver and release of liability. I think that is the main one. And to be honest, myself, I haven't signed my right of entry permit yet because I need to know what's going on with my debris removal first.
Mhm.
So I know that my insurance company has said that Onside was going to get the award, but like I said, I've got that shortfall. So we need to know who to apply to get that balance covered.
Can I speak to that, Melissa?
Yes, please.
From my understanding, what we're doing right now is we're either this week or the first thing next week, our project manager will be meeting with the insurance companies because we're trying to get the same information in the sense that we can go into the community with the contractors and do the entire community, not be doing one off. So we're trying to work so that it's easier for the residents to move forward. So as soon as we have information on that, we'll provide it to yourselves and the residents as well.
Okay, that makes sense. One other thing that has been mentioned quite a few times is I think we need some kind of report or transparency about the ATCO commercial. That raised a lot of, I don't know how to say it. There's lots of people that are really upset about it because it wasn't disclosed to the property owners beforehand. I mean, myself, I found out when I got to work. I never heard from anyone within the village office staff or council about this commercial being produced. And then I got to work and found out because I work for one of the First Nations bands and they were notified. And then I happened to be on the council meeting and I know that the mayor mentioned about the money that was coming in from it. But I think that there needs to be more transparency around that.
Yes, yep.
So whether or not there can be a report produced and put out. And that is everything. Thank you.
Member Michelle, can I ask you a question without putting you on the spot? Because I know you've had a lot of dealings with the insurance people and the insured people in town. Is there in people's policy a limit for the cleanup?
Yeah, most people do have a limit, some don't. I believe it's called guaranteed replacement cost. So in your policy, if you've got that, if there's an overage on, like, they still have a number for their debris removal, but if it goes over and they've got guaranteed replacement cost, they're still going to get that covered. So for myself, with it coming in at 33,000, but I only have 25 coverage, they will pay the 33,000, but they're going to deduct 8,000 off of my building funds then.
Oh.
And I think the majority of the policies in Lytton there's a shortfall from what I understand.
I'm gonna shoot you an email tonight and you can explain it a bit more. Are you okay with that?
Yep.
Thank you. Mr. Taylor.
The things I have been hearing from people have already been touched upon.
Thank you. Member Baxter?
I think-
No, I don't think I have any things to comment on here.
Super. Member Harrison?
Just further to what Melissa was saying there, yes, I think that the most of our insurance policies are that way. There's only a certain number that the insurance company will go to, and after that, it comes off of our building costs. So,
yeah,
I'm not happy about it, but I don't know what can be done. So I'll be anxiously awaiting to hear about that. The other thing was that I'm still working on, I've had a question about foundations, and there's one person who says their foundation would be good if someone would inspect it. So I have to find out yet. I thought maybe Ron Dickinson would be on here tonight, but I think I have to talk to him. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah, I had Ron to speak to that tonight, and I don't, what he talked anyway, and I've spoken to you about it, was that it's got to be certified by an engineer, okay, that knows concrete. And I would imagine the reason being that the insurance company would hate you to build a house and then have the foundation crumble halfway through it. So it's something to be done, and I will hopefully get him to make a comment on that next Wednesday night's meeting, so we can get as many people as we can.
Okay, so there's no panic on this, like this cleanup isn't gonna happen in the next couple of weeks. We don't have to worry about.
It's already started. It's already started down
Take a
there.
while.
Sorry, what?
It's already started.
On the residents, for the residents?
Something done.
So the municipal properties have been done, and we're starting to work on the uninsured properties. And we were hoping to be able to work with the insurance companies to be working on the insured if they're amongst the uninsured. So we're going from zone 1 to zone 7. It's been divvied out that way. From south to north, I believe, is how it's working.
So what I'll do is I will get on to Mr. Dickinson and also Mr. High and get an answer of some sort for them, and I'll send it out to the committee people and try and distribute it as best you can to other people.
Okay, that sounds
Okay.
good.
Member Lightfoot?
I just want, I'm sure you've all thought about every scenario possible, but to me, one suggestion I was thinking about for the underinsured, for getting all the waivers agreed to would be, say a homeowner loses their house and they've got insurance, there's a set amount for debris removal. If the insurer and their adjuster made a statement to the village that said under so-and-so's policy, our company is responsible for $20,000 for debris removal, and they sign that as an affidavit and a statement of truth, couldn't there just be one paying entity that does everything? And then at the end of it, they bill out the insurance companies? So
So that's
X
what,
would,
Joshua, that is what we are working on.
perfect, because
That's exactly what
that
we're
is
working
why
on.
people are hesitating, is because
Yeah.
they're looking at trying to do it as cheap as possible so they can rebuild, because even now rebuilding is, is hitting them. That's great.
Yeah.
I've got my fingers crossed that by next week it's, thank you.
Yeah, so there's economies of scale, but there's also to make sure that all the properties get cleaned up simultaneously. Yeah.
CFO, you got anything like that before the meeting adjourns?
I do not, but
Thank you for your time.
I do not have any more comments. Thanks everyone for their comments and input, and to you for chairing the meeting. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Madam CEO.
Yep, that's great.
So I'm gonna need a motion to adjourn the meeting, please. Want to keep going?
So moved.
Thank you. Next meeting is on the 20th, 2022. Oh, sorry, one thing before I close. We got to say goodbye to Madam CAO. I just want to thank her for all the work she's done on behalf of the committee. She arranges all the speakers to come in for us, prepares all the agendas, and looks after everything. The terms of reference she helped do, and she's surely going to be missed. Mr. Bertuzzi will be stepping in to take her place starting next week. That's just because she's buried in work, and I'm sure she enjoyed herself. Anyway, we'll see you all later, and I'll get a note of you right away about the cement buildings or cement basements.
Thank you, Leslie. Thank you,
Yeah.
Ian.
Okay.
Good night.
Everyone, have a good night.
Night.